because this talk heads up to UX Belfast and Rick Monroe. They were doing, they were spending the night doing a review of, actually it's a really good book if I would recommend to you. It's called Product Management for UX People by Christian Crumlish. And he wanted basically some per person who'd kind of been in the trenches for a number of years and worked in a number of different companies. So had experience of where product played a different role and UX played a different role and different ways the two teams had worked together, and just to feedback how how that worked. And so I created this talk based on my experience, wee bits of the book that that Chris has written, and also we did a survey to find out, just from a range of different people, their points of view on how product is made, how the teams work together, etc. So this has come from a range of different sources, and might be more like, I think, therapy to some people, but we'll see how we go. So yes, this is me, and Fully's just out there. Ian has gone. I think I've gone a bit fuzzy there as well. So my name's Emma Mulholland. I'm currently, I'm thinking, because my job title is changeable. I'm an innovation research lead, stroke venture architect, service designer at Whitespace. So I do kind of consultancy around early stage startups and products and services around basically identifying the right problem to solve and then doing that early stage solving bit. But my background historically has been product management, and I've worked in like big enterprises like Marks and Spencer's and Tesco, and I've worked in like startups like Shopkeep. I know there's some Shopkeep people on the call here, and a couple of consultancies as well. So essentially, we all want to create awesome things that people love. However, it can be really freaking hard when we try and do that as a team sometimes. So why is it so hard when you have all these different people coming together who want to do the same thing? Why can that become difficult? And how can we start to make that a bit better? So essentially, expectations about who does what and why, and sometimes even how, can be really different. My observation is that what a role is called, what people do, everyone can have a subjective opinion on it. It can differ depending on the product you're on, the company you're in. And the titles are really unhelpful. I mean, you could talk all night about what's a product owner versus a product manager, what's a product designer versus like a UX designer. They aren't helpful because we can argue ourselves within the industry about what they mean. Never mind the poor people who have to try and work with us as we go through it. Essentially, there's this like huge range of skills and things that need to happen to make good product. But I'll touch on, to start with, like, where does product live and where does UX live, and start to tease out what some of these skills are, I guess. So this diagram gets used a lot to explain product. So it's essentially, we describe ourselves as the intersection between the user, the market, and technology. So we essentially are trying to understand the usability, viability, and feasibility risks, and then validate them at all times to get that kind of innovation or product in the center. But what's quite hilarious is if you start to look at, like, well, okay, what's the definition of UX design or UX experience, and you start to kind of Google it, you'll pretty much get incredibly similar diagrams. So you can start to see why maybe these roles kind of overlap, and why you can sometimes start to get kind of some conflict or friction, because everyone starts to think that they kind of own this central area, where all this magic is supposed to be happening. So a lot of skills are required to make this product work. These are just some of the skills that can sit across both roles and where the overlap starts to happen. Stole this nice diagram from Pendo. The list on the right hand side comes directly from Chris's book, and again, it'll be the top bit will be kind of the design skills, and then when you get into the green, you're starting to get into where product and design overlap, and then you start to get into the product specific skills. What can add to this confusion about the fact that we don't know who we are really, or what we're supposed to be doing? Because I mean, if we even go back here and say, like part of what makes our jobs so interesting or so freaking difficult is like these are a heck ton of skills. Like to put all of these skills into one person and put that responsibility into one person can be is incredibly difficult and stressful as well. And if you think about the product life cycle, you're going from kind of strategy, vision, that early discovery stuff, and then right down to delivery. You know, that would give you more, I guess, more space for these roles to work together. However, what you'll often find, specifically in Belfast, which is quite engineering focused, and these roles are quite new, UX and product, is you get pushed and pushed into this little really small delivery focused space, because as much as we all love to do the research and the discovery work, you're quite often kind of whipped into just, you know, focus on your sprints. You kind of become a slave to these kind of sprints, and then everyone ends up into this really small delivery space, and then that can become even more interesting when you have kind of a lot of different roles trying to exist in this like small space. This is essentially where you're almost in the trenches at this point. It can get really interesting when you're all trying to kind of become very delivery focused and just get things out there. So here's some of the different models, I guess, or different org structures that I've experienced over the years, like going way back in the day to like, I guess, big programs of work with Tesco, or you'd have like, and Marks and Spencer's, where sometimes you had your kind of internal UX teams, but quite often you'd have a delivery partner, like an agency who was a delivery partner. So they'd be completely different companies, like an external agency, and they'd be very directive. They'd be the expert. There wouldn't be a lot of collaboration, and be kind of, you know, delivered to the company. And at the time, I just accepted a lot of this and just went with it. And nowadays it seems really strange to not have that collaboration, and not. Also, there wasn't a lot of user research. There was kind of a bit of a, oh, well, we're the experts, so we'll just kind of do it. And they went off and designed like gorgeous stuff and brought it back and give it to you, and that was pretty much it. And then you kind of have these models where you have different functions within the same company, but they could almost be different teams, you know, because they're still like one's a service to another. And they're kind of almost like shared capabilities, or, you know, it's sometimes they can even be different cost centers, and you're actually managing budgets in that way. And again, that can create interesting dynamics because you don't have this collaboration or kind of like a shared goal. You again, just kind of almost in service to each other. And then more recently, we started to see these kind of team formations where you're starting to try and get to the point where, you know, you've got these flat collaborative teams. So you've got these functional team, like functions or skills or roles within the team, but they're not working together completely collaboratively yet. And this can be, I guess it's a bit like the norming, storming, performing. Like at the very early stages, this can be, or maybe some of the more highly contentious or more conflict areas can come in, because you're trying to get everyone working collaboratively, but then people can get a little bit territorial, or you've got this confusion, like, you know, products the CEO, and, you know, the UX designer owns a relationship with the customer, and people all get a bit touchy about things, as opposed to just kind of everyone owning the product and everyone working together. There's also risks in this model where it can get a little bit waterfally if you're just kind of doing these handovers to each other over and over, and it can start to create some distrust and dysfunction. So where do you want to get to? Like, what have the best systems been for me? And how do you organize to kind of get these like really nice, efficient performing teams? So I really like the model. Teresa Torres talks about this a lot, of what we call the empowered product trio. So essentially it is a fully collaborative team. What I really liked about, there's a theme tonight at Crosstalks I noticed from Niall and Connor and Emma about kind of diversity of skills, bringing like needed to create really awesome products, I guess, like really useful products that are going to meet the needs of everyone. And this is essentially the same thing. It doesn't need to be these three roles where you've got design, product, and tech. It's basically, you want to get as much diversity into this team as possible. And they should be working together right from the beginning. So you're continuously discovering and delivering together collaboratively, as opposed to kind of in service to each other, or handoffs, or any kind of other weird and wonderful territorial things. So the way to think about this is, you know, to be a balanced team, a bit like a stool. So you've got to have all these skills and functions working together harmoniously. And the way to think about it then as well is that you've got this product life cycle. So you have a range of things that need to happen to create the product. And it's not a case of like, you know, different stages are owned by different roles. It's a case that the whole team works together the whole way through the life cycle. Now, at different points, there will be more of potentially one skill's time than in others, but the whole team should be working together the whole way through. And that's from like problem identification, solution creation. It's almost like your double diamond. So you're, you know, you're framing into the business creation. If it's a startup, you're doing a lot of kind of operational setup at the same time as you're building this startup, and then you launch, learn, hopefully scale and optimize, you know, potentially pivot, eventually die. I'm just looking at the time here. So some of the red flags, like some of the things that will prevent this harmonious, wonderful team from happening is are listed down here. If there is a lack of leadership or support, if you don't have like a very strong vision and leadership team that gives you the right direction to go for, that can cause fragmentation within the team. You know, because if you're all being, I've got different steers, I guess. So I've seen that happen before, and that can cause issues. Command and control culture. If you have people who want to have control or want to have hierarchy, that can cause tensions within the team. Again, if you get the titles wrong, so if you're trying to call a product manager, a project manager, or a delivery lead or something like that, you're setting different expectations from what that role is, and again, it can create issues. Feature factories, silos, lack of trust, etc. I remember I got back from my dog walk earlier, and there was a whole conversation about kindness and trust that I caught the end of. That was really nice. If you don't have those foundations, the empathy and the trust, then you know that'll start to create issues in the team. Okay, I'm going to skip over the next bit quite quickly because we've kind of been going here for over 10 minutes. I can share this deck out afterwards if you want, but this is where I got a lot of feedback from other people about their opinions on how product and UX work together, and teams, how our product was made generally. So I'm going to jump through these, but what I do want to kind of wrap up on is things that help these kind of different roles work together and to create this harmonious team. I had to come up with a theme, so it was all around the C's, which is collaboration, communication, culture, compromise. What I'd also say is to not focus so much on like roles or ownership or who does what, or it's kind of just this understanding that there is a whole range of skills, and the skills may sit with different people, and that they'll be needed at different points in this product life cycle. So the whole team just needs to work together to kind of get you through this product life cycle. And here's some other tips, I guess, to get the team working together, which is pairing. I absolutely love pairing. Product people compare together, product and design compare together, you compare with engineering, so that you're continuously getting kind of these different skills working together. Make sure that you've got some kind of processes that give you the framework and can create that safety for you to work together, but they should be lightweight and can be adapted. You need to create this culture of trust, psychological safety, and just continuously align and give context to everything you're thinking, everything you're doing, you know, so that there's to avoid confusion or disconnect is just to continuously have this alignment happening. Don't ever use your role or your position or the title as a rationale for a decision. It should be based on data and evidence, etc., and linking into business strategies and goals. There should be frameworks for making decisions, as opposed to just, well, you know, I'm design, I own this, I'm making this decision unilaterally, or product does this, or engineering does this, because that, you know, that could start creating issues. Understand yourself fully. So this is linking back into the empathy, because you will become a much better co-worker if you can start to understand your own trigger points, or why you feel certain things, and start to kind of try and understand someone else's point of view, and focus on like the team health and the product you're creating, so not individual functions or roles. Because essentially we all want, you know, expectations to be set. We all want to be working to the same goals, to have this kind of sense of alignment, to be included and appreciated, and to have communications, and to be empowered to do our job. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Emma. Very, very interesting topic. So there's a couple of questions or kind of messages through, but if anyone has questions they want to kind of ask, or if you want to unmute, camera off, on, whatever, work away. But so this question came through, like at the beginning you mentioned about, like, you know, the overlapping of these titles and overlapping of work. Like, how do people then manage the additional stress that comes with, like, you're not just UX, you're also like UX with engineering and vice versa?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. Like, how do you manage your stress when your accountability kind of broadens to stupid levels? That's what we're saying. I think it's to keep and make sure that you always have the alignment. So everyone always has an expectation of who's doing what and when. If that's making sense. So there's this kind of fluidity, but if you always have an understanding of what the team are working towards. So I guess you could always go back to your agile principles as well around like retros and things like that, and making sure that you've all an understanding of like the next thing you're working on, or what the priority of things are, or why you're doing things. And then that kind of links into, I guess, who's doing them as well. Don't know if that was a good answer, a bit of a waffly answer, but
no, perfect. And like that kind of leads into like there was another two kind of questions came up where like around, like you mentioned, like the term like turf wars, and then like the lack of trust between like different teams, like like establishing that like respect and communication, and like I know myself, like I want to make sure I'm doing this because this is my part of the project, and how like, is there tips and tricks around like communicating and dealing with people in other sides of the business, and like not holding everything into yourself?
Yes, not holding everything into yourself, I guess, is one thing. So that's, as hard as it is, it's to give up the idea that this is your baby. So I remember I worked with someone last year. She joined my team, and she just kept going on about how this is not your, like, do you know what I mean? Because we kind of, it becomes our thing and we become very protective of it. But actually, you've got to bear in mind that this is like a shared thing. And so it's got to try and to create the sense of objectivity at all points, and become less territorial is the wrong word. That sounds quite strong. But you know what I mean? I mean, being open enough to do you know the other thing I'd say, and some people really hate doing this, but I've got actually really good at it because it's opening yourself up to feedback at a really early stage. I think quite often people don't want to show things until it's really shiny and really done, and by that time there's no flex, and also you will take any feedback quite personally. Like I flag intentions. Like if I'm how I'm thinking, I'll put it into a Slack channel to be like, so like even people can see where my head's going or what I'm even going to start doing. And I'll put people into things really early when it's incredibly scrappy, just so that they can actually give me a sense of if I'm even in the right direction. And so we can start to collaborate earlier on, as opposed to people getting things to like quite shiny points and then trying to do that, because at that point you can't really do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But like I'm very guilty of like being possessive, and like I've used the term before, like this is my baby and I can't like not work on this project anymore, and people are saying like you need to like move out and grow or whatever. It's such a like a fine balance that you kind of have to deal with, I guess. Let's see, I think we have a message in the chat.
Yeah, I just saw there, but it's quite common for people to not feel comfortable sharing their work in progress stuff. Yeah, I've noticed this as well, and it's you don't like to feel vulnerable, and you also, I think it's because we're taught, like when you're in school and stuff, that you know what you're presenting as a finished thing, as opposed to, and that's actually the antithesis of collaboration. That's closing things down. Do you know what I mean? So if it's something you can like practice, even if you don't want to show things, if you even can verbalize what you're thinking or why you're thinking, and start having conversations, can be a starting point as well.
I completely like I suppose because design, I'm like totally like on board with everything that you were saying there. And I think, I think a lot of it to do, because you touched on titles, right? I think a lot of that as well comes with ego, and it comes with a lot of people taking ownership of this certain feature. Nobody else can touch it and it's precious. But I think the thing that everybody kind of needs to realize is that we're stop thinking in the I and think in the collective we. So it's like, I don't own this product, we do. Like, I don't own this feature, we do. So therefore it's like, if I give feedback to engineers and they push back, it's like, no, you don't own this, we do. If they give pushback to me on design decisions, they might not have historical knowledge and stuff of what's happening. I don't own that, we do. So it's like, and the users. So it's about that sort of like
Yeah.
aspect too. And yeah, I think it's great to bring visibility into how we all work together, because I do feel that there are silos that happen where it's like engineering are in their wee bubble talking together, working out what's technically feasible. We're over here trying to figure out what's best for our users, but it's quite unfortunately rare that like everybody. That's why I love hackathons, because I think it just brings everybody into room and it gives visibility of the process.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Because
it's
the
like
thing as well is, if you don't, especially for engineering and design, which is even more distinctive than the product and UX design side, and you could go quite far along a line of thought and have spent like quite a considerable amount of time designing things that isn't going to be feasible at all. Whereas if you had an engineer there earlier, you could even have done something that potentially could look quite similar, have a similar user experience, but technically, you know, could be really a lot easier. The other thing is it's just fun. Like the most fun I've had is when I've worked with designers who are just open to like literally collaborating, like, you know, like brainstorming stuff and doing crazy hits. And like, if you can find workshopping tools that enable everyone to get creative and make people who aren't design like feel like confident enough to like draw sketch things, like you'll just like the power of like the amount of ideas generated from that group of people is just freaking immense. I think the saddest, like probably the more toxic teams we've been in, is where you're completely disconnected. I think there was like people used to be like, when I like, they just won't let us play with their toys at all. It's like feeling sad and frustrated. It's like, you take all the fun away from us stuff, and then you just throw it over to us to like, do you know what I mean? So it's just, it actually just brings some crack into it as well.
A 100% crack, it has to be there. And I think it even touches on Niall's talk as well, where it's like, you know, you bring kindness and all, bring crack, and realize that it's like we're all humans building things for humans, so we can have a bit of banter along the way. And I think, you know, with sharing work early and often, I think that's like obviously best practices, and some people are less confident in doing so. Knowing as well and touching that, like, again, some best intentions, that everybody's on the same page. Like, you know, nobody's going to be critiquing you that you're padding on this part of the text when you were presenting it. Something is 20 pixels off. Like, they're not critiquing what you're giving them. It's like you're just presenting them with ideas, you know. But no, fab, absolutely fab.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say that I learned in the last couple of months is that if you are like hurt or something upsets you, is to try and to talk to people about that sooner rather than later. Like, don't let resentments faster. Like, you'll invent whole stories in your head. I'll give you a quick example just because it's so like such a stupid example, but you can see how resentments start, which is there was like, we had an intern, some like a junior person in our team, and one of the guys I was working with, I was doing a big piece of research and having to do loads of analysis, like 14 user interviews and all that stuff. And so he'd had conversations with multiple people without me about getting this intern in to support me to do some work. And then I just got told they were joining to help. And I just, like, my assumption is, well, am I not going fast enough, or am I not, do you know what I mean? And I'd started, because it was like, well, you didn't even ask me if I needed it. You didn't, am I not giving you the stuff? Do you know what I mean? You start to create these stories in your head that if I hadn't have just had a conversation with them and said, hey, you know, it's great you've got someone come in, but where did that come from? Or what, like, is there stuff you need from me that you're not getting from me that you've now asked someone else to come in to give you? Do you know what I mean? And he's just like, no, she just doesn't have anything to do. She needs some work. So she thought she could learn from you. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds awesome. Brilliant. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Communication's king.
Yes, indeed. Queen, communication's queen.
Queen.
Context, communication and context are queen. Cool.
That's awesome. So many takeaways I have already, and so many like things I want to like dig into and deep into, like further, like how I can like grow and advance my different teams. Although I think like one of the big questions, and one of the big, maybe it's not really a question, more of a request, like that we didn't address here, is like, you know, we just want more Sully involved in everything. you don't have to go grab.
Over here. He's very happy with his column, so I don't think he's going to move at all. It might sit at the end. Over here. No, she's like, be like, nope, I'm not moving.
Yeah.
I'll get him at the end. I'll bring him around.
Yeah. Oh,
but he's
Pepper,
huge.
Yeah. Pepper's tiny, and she's like curled up in a ball in the corner of the room, so she's not for moving. It's cozy, warm time.